Hello, my name is Lizzie and this is Lizzie's Literary Life, and today we are doing my March Tipsy wrap up. So, today I am drinking a strawberry. It's actually white wine, but I just put it in this strawberry. I saw this strawberry tumbler at Stop and Shop and I was like, it's spring, I have to get it. So here we are. I'm drinking out of a strawberry. I normally get, when I go and I get white wine, I usually get a Sauvignon Blanc and like the cheapest one that I can get, but they were out of stock of that. So I got the same brand, so it was still cheap, but I got the Pinot Grigio and it's not good. But I'm drinking it anyway, and it's better because it's in a strawberry. And we are here today to talk about all of the books that I read in March 2024. It is now like the middle of April because at the beginning of April I had COVID and I was going to film this video anyway and just do like a COVID version with like tea instead of alcohol, but then I didn't. So here we are. I'm recovered and I've got alcohol. So March was a long time ago and I kind of have no idea what I read. So we're going to find out together. So starting with some stats. In March, I read 12 books, which was a total of 4,359 pages, which I feel like is pretty good. Like, how does that relate to my previous months? Let me see. This is my lowest month in terms of books read so far, but not by much, and I feel like it's a good page count. That was an average of 363.25 pages per book, with an average audiobook hours per book of 11.37. My average rating was a 3.4, which is kind of on par with how it's been. I spent an average of 5.58 days reading each book, and I read an average of 140.6 pages per day. The total time I spent reading was 51.5 hours, which that number always boggles my mind because it always feels like so much, even if it's like a low month. The average time I spent per book was 4.29 hours, with an average speed in pages per hour of 95.58. A third of the books I read this month were in series, and that's not true. Oh no, that is true. None of them were rereads. I was mixing up some April books. And that's the numerical stats. In terms of genres, I read a lot of variety in genres this month. We've got a lot of contemporary, like 25% contemporary, but a good chunk mystery thriller, good chunk romance, good chunk nonfiction, some historical, some fantasy, all over the map. I love when we get this blue circle pie, which is that I read only adult books, no young adult or middle grade. That just tickles my fancy. Though I did read, actually I don't know if I read any in March, but I never count my Magic Treehouse reading in this spreadsheet. That's in a separate spreadsheet. So I do most months read some children's books, but that doesn't count for this because I just count them separately. Format-wise, pretty even, audio and ebook being larger than physical. I feel like I've been listening to more audiobooks this year than I did last year. Let me verify that and see if that's actually true. That is kind of true. That is true. More audiobooks than the last 2 years, but less than 2021. Maybe I'll put that graph in if I remember. Where are we? As for where I acquired these books, mostly from the library, some from Kindle Unlimited, some from Everand. There were no books that I owned this month. And rating-wise, very middle high, like medium high. You know, when it's like turn the oven onto medium high heat? Not the oven, the stove. I don't know why I'm making that comparison. You know what medium high means. You see the graph. We have 1 2-star, and then everything else is 3, 3.5, or 4. So all very like middle of the road, but like higher end of middle of the road. And that's our stats. So the first book that I read in March was Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Seanan McGuire. And now I just said that this graph was all adult books, like this month was all adult books. And I feel like the Wayward Children series, I never know how to rate them age category wise because they're about teenagers, but they're not necessarily YA, I feel like. So I don't really know. Comment down below if you disagree with me on categorizing them as like general audience adult, because I just do like adult just means like general audience, not like specifically young adult or middle grade. So I don't know. I gave this 3.5 stars. I remember nothing about it except that there were dinosaurs, and I only know that because they were on the cover. Actually, I'm remembering more. What did I like? The writing in this series is good. Like, it's just always good. This is book, 9 in the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire, which, if you don't know, is about children who go through doors to other worlds, and then they come back to our world, and they have to deal with the repercussions of being back. And kind of every other book is set in our world, and the other books are set in the worlds that the kids go to. This was kind of a weird one. I guess it was an Our World book, but they did go to other worlds within it. They went to a bunch of other worlds, which was cool. It was cool to see a lot of other worlds. It was similar in that way to the one that's set, I don't remember what it's called, but the one that's set at the where the lost things go. Lost in the moment and found, that's what it's called. Similar to that one in that regard, and I liked that one a lot, but I liked this one a little less. I don't remember why, but I read it. And then I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I read this in my Booktuber favorites vlog, so I'll link that up here if you have not seen it. This is a fantasy romance about, and I'd never really, before that vlog, I hadn't really read any fantasy romance or like romantasy or whatever we want to call it. And I liked this. I gave it 4 stars. The ending really got me. Like, it was fun. This is about a vampire world. And there's vampires and there's humans, and our main character is a human, but she was raised by the vampire king. And she is entering this contest, this like trial, where people are basically fighting to the death to get a gift from the goddess. And that's the setup. And the romance in it was very slow burn and very like, I liked it. I didn't dislike it. And I kind of feel like what puts me off about fantasy romance is the romance element. But I liked this. I thought it was fun. It was well written. It was well plotted. And the ending really got me. That's all I gotta say. So I will be continuing the series, though I've heard the next one is not as good. But I will be eventually continuing the series. And then, also for that vlog, I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This I liked less than I thought I would, and I gave it 3 stars, which is not a bad rating. I just thought I would love it because I love R.F. Kuang's other work, or I love Babel. I haven't read The Poppy War yet, but this book is about a woman a white woman named June Hayward, who is a writer, and her friend Athena is also a writer and is Asian, and her Athena, they're hanging out together one night, and Athena dies tragically and also kind of comically. And June steals Athena's manuscript, unpublished manuscript, and publishes it as her own. And she kind of changes her name. It's like her real name, but she changes her pen name to Juniper Song, because her name is Juniper Song Hayward, and she like previously went by June Hayward, but she changes her author pen name to Juniper Song, so she's like seeming more racially ambiguous, and it's a story about Chinese history, and it's like very ambiguously moral, not moral at all. We go from there. What I didn't like about this is that it was described as a literary thriller, and I didn't get that thriller element. I felt like the setup happened, and the setup is great, and then nothing else really happened. And the pro was that the writing was great, because R.F. Kuang can write, and the themes were good, but the plot just didn't really go anywhere. So, so. And then I read Outcasts United by Warren St. John, which is a nonfiction that I read for the Magic Treehouse read-along, which is over. I mentioned Magic Treehouse already, but we read all of them. We read all the Magic Treehouse that are out, and there's like 65. We've been working on it since like 2022. The Magic Treehouse read-along, if you don't know, because it's over, but it's not over, is hosted by Martine from Just Martine and Bailey from Is Bailey Reading. And we read all the Magic Treehouse books, and every other month we read a nonfiction related to one of the Magic Treehouse books. And starting in a couple months, the Magic Treehouse series is over. But, well, it's not over, but we've read all of them, all the ones that are out. And in a couple months, we will be starting the Junie B. Jones series, and reading kind of more related nonfiction, more like psychology, self-help type books, which I'm a little apprehensive about because I haven't read a lot of those types of nonfictions, but I'm open to it. And I'm really excited to read Junie B. Jones. I was a Junie B. Jones. Well, I was not a huge Junie B. Jones kid, but I did read them, so I'm excited for that. That was a tangent. For the Magic Treehouse read-along, the last nonfiction we read was Outcasts United by Warren St. John. And this is a book about a soccer team in Georgia, a youth soccer team that's entirely made up of refugee kids. There's this town outside of Atlanta. I can't remember the town's name, but it exists. It's a nonfiction. It's true. Where a lot of refugee population has been settled, and it's not just from one place. It's like a lot of different people from different countries being settled as refugees in this town. And this woman decided to start a soccer team for these refugee kids, and it just was this huge positive impact in these kids' lives. And it was the story about the team and her struggles running this team, and also all she did for these, the coach did for these families, and it just was like kind of beautiful. Like, I loved it. It's a sports book, but it wasn't really about sports. It was about these people's stories and how the sports brought them together, and I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. I thought this was a really strong nonfiction book. It's written by a journalist who went down there and hung out with the team for a while to research this book. And the actual like sports soccer descriptions are kind of few and far between, but it made them so much more powerful because you know all of these kids' stories and you care about these kids that are making the goal or whatever. So, and the coach and the team. So it was really good. And then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver, which is in my Bailey's Favorites reading vlog, which I will link up there. This is a romance, a cowboy romance on Kindle Unlimited that I actually liked. Well, this one was fine. I liked the second one, spoilers, but I liked them both. They were decent romances. This first one is about this family, the Eatons, who have this ranch, and there's like 4 brothers or 3 brothers and a sister. And the first book follows one of the brothers who is a bull rider, a professional bull rider, and he's like a celebrity sports guy, and he messes up. He does something stupid on camera, and he has to and he's threatening to loot, like sponsors are threatening to drop him, and he has to clean up his image. And so his agent his agent is this guy, and the guy sends his daughter, who is lower down in the company, law student, whatever, to basically babysit the bull rider to clean up his image. That's the premise. It's kind of silly, but it's a romance. It's allowed to be silly. And I thought it was fun. I thought it was sweet. If you want more thoughts, go to my Bailey vlog, but this was fun. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't great. I think the smut was a little gratuitous, but like it was just too much. But otherwise, solid. And then, also for the Bailey vlog, I read The One by John Mars, which I gave 3.5 stars. This is a thriller about a world in which there's this company that found a gene that like connects you to your soulmate. So like you can take this test, like Ancestry DNA or 23andMe, you send in your DNA and they send you your soulmate match. And it goes from there. And my issue with it was that it was like 5 different storylines. We're switching between perspectives and they never connect. And that's maybe a spoiler, but I don't know. They never connect. And that bugged me. I was waiting for them to connect and they didn't. But each individual one was pretty good. So, like, each individual one, and, like, I guess as a whole, it was a solid thriller. It was just a little disconnected, is my only complaint. But 3.5 stars, solid. I talked about these in a vlog, so I'm not going to go in depth. I don't know. I don't want this video to be too long, but it kind of already is. And then I read, also for the Bailey vlog, The Lager Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stradal. This I gave 3.5 stars as well, but a much higher 3.5 stars. I liked this a lot. I honestly could bump it to a 4 stars because I've recommended it to a couple people since. This is it's a multi-generational story about making beer. And it's just like a general fiction set in the Midwest, heartwarming little book. And I don't really know how else to describe it. We're following these 2 sisters, and then one of the sisters' granddaughter are our perspective characters. If you want to know more, check out my Bailey vlog. But I liked it. It was a good recommendation, and I've recommended it to other people since. So that's the sign of a good book. And then the last book for the Bailey vlog was the sequel to Flawless, which is Heartless by Elsie Silver. This one I liked better because I liked the parenting elements with the kids. This one is following one of the other brothers who is a single dad. And the female main character from the first book has a best friend who comes to the ranch to be the nanny for the single dad's kid for the summer. And dad and nanny fall in love. But I liked the kid. I thought the kid was fun and well written. I think it's kind of I think it's kind of hard to write kids well in an adult book. And Elsie Silver did. So good for her. I had kind of some of the same issues that I did with the first one, but really, like, it was a solid romance. It was a really solid romance, and I liked it, and I'm excited to continue the series. So maybe I rate romance too harshly, I don't know, but I'm excited to continue the series. And then I read Jane Austen, The Secret Radical by Helena Kelly. This was my pick for the Buzzwordathon challenge. So Buzzwordathon is a reading challenge created by Kayla from Books and Lala, who she does there's a word or a word theme for every month. And so it's a year-long reading challenge, and you try to read a book in that theme or with that word in the title each month. And Ruby from Ruby Red, who is one of my besties, and I are doing a nonfiction version of that challenge. So each month we read a nonfiction that fits the Buzzwordathon theme. And the theme for March was character names. And so we picked a book with a person's name in the title. So Jane Austen, The Secret Radical. This is a book that takes Jane Austen's, it's by like a literature PhD person, and she takes each of Jane Austen's novels and analyzes them in kind of a new way. Like, we often see Jane Austen's books as like, oh, they're silly little romances. I mean, they're good classics, but they're also like kind of silly little romances. Like, I feel like that's the pop culture image of her, and this book takes them and says, no, this one's about slavery. Mansfield Park is about slavery. This one is about this political issue. This one's about this political issue. And she takes the context of other things that people would be reading at that time and the literary references in those books and the historical references in those books that we don't get as modern readers because we are not familiar with these other literary works and not familiar with the references. But she backs up these claims of this book is about this Jane Austen is secretly making political statements by explaining the references, all of these references in Jane Austen's works. And I thought it was great. I thought it was great. I think it's an excellent concept. It was not the time for me to read this. I think you need to be really familiar with Jane Austen's works to appreciate this book. And so, like, the Pride and Prejudice chapter I loved because I'm really familiar with that one. Northanger Abbey I read pretty recently, so I was more invested in that chapter. But the other ones, I've read most of them, but I had a phase in high school where I listened to several of Jane Austen's novels on audiobook back to back, and they all blur together for me. So I really need to reread them to really get the plots because I don't really remember them. So those chapters were they were good, but it was I don't really get what we're saying here. So I ended up giving it 3 stars just because it wasn't the best reading experience for me. The other thing was that Helena Kelly puts in these little fiction segments that are based on Jane Austen's letters, and they're fictionalized, where she would have been at the time she was writing it. And I wasn't sure how I felt about those. The audiobook narrator did a British accent just for those sections, and I did not like that. I did not like that she put on a British accent just for certain sections. That was weird to me. And then I didn't know how I felt about those in general, so that was the other reason it got a lower rating. But mostly it was just because I wasn't studied up on my Austen. And I kind of want to do a project in a future year where I read each Austen novel and then the subsequent chapter in this and do an in-depth analysis, but that wasn't what I did this time. I just listened to it straight through, and that, I think, hindered my experience. So if you're really familiar with Jane Austen's works, or even some of Jane Austen's works, I highly recommend this. Otherwise, it doesn't really stand on its own very well, because it's very referential to those novels. And then I read Not So Perfect Strangers by L.S. Stratton. This was the Shelf This Book Club pick for March. The Shelf This Book Club is hosted by Bailey from His Bailey Reading, one of my BookTube besties. And a different person picks the book every month. And this month it was Nessa from It's Nessa. And she picked this thriller, Not So Perfect Strangers by L.S. Stratton. And it was not good for me personally. I gave it 2 stars. I just found it kind of boring. The premise is that, the summary on the back of the book is that we have, actually I didn't read it, I just heard other people describe it, but my impression of the summary on the back of the book is that we have this one woman who is running away from her abusive husband, and then another woman comes and knocks on the car window and is like, let me in, I need to get away from my husband. And so they go off together. And that's what I thought it was. Turns out that all happens right at the very beginning. And then the other woman just gets out of the car. And we don't have that they're together anymore. What really is going on is that in this kind of small interaction and their subsequent interactions of these 2 women, one of them is we should kill each other's husbands for each other. which I feel like is the premise of another book, and I can't remember what it is, but I feel like that's the premise of another book. Anyway, and one of the women is kind of like crazy, and the other one is like kind of sane, and it just goes from there. I think the premise is good, but I did not like the execution. I thought it was just boring and not very good, and that's all I have to say. And then I started my women's prize reading. So I am reading, as you saw in my previous video, where I read the first lines. I'm reading the long list for the women's prize for fiction, or I'm attempting to read the long list, and I will definitely read the short list. So expect a video in a couple weeks. Once the short list comes out, you'll get the first women's prize vlog. So I read 2 women's prize books, Brotherless Night by Vivi Ganeshanathan, and Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. Those are both discussed in a future vlog, so I'm not going to discuss them right now. But I liked them. That's all you get. You get that I liked them. This video was long enough. So look out for that vlog coming once the shortlist is out. I think the shortlist is out April 24th, so shortly after that, you will get my long list vlog. I feel like my voice is very, deep in this video, but that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, so those last 2 books I'm not going to talk about today because you haven't seen the vlog yet, but I liked them. There's nothing else I have to say. That was my March. We went through it. We drank from a strawberry. I'm going to refill my strawberry and enjoy. Even though the wine is kind of bad, I'm still going to enjoy. And you should comment down below something. And I will see you, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one coming very soon. Bye.